Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode from the Nosebleeds. As you know, I'm your host, Dan Carcamo, and I do have a surprise. This video is going to be a little bit different, as I do have another co-host talking about Mets and Yankees baseball and all their offseason moves and what to look forward through spring training, and to see where maybe we can give our hints to where Minnie and Harper will sign. But without further ado, watch the video and enjoy the content, guys. Thanks. All right, guys, I'm here with my dear friend and my baseball analyst, Pat Ragazzo. How you doing, Pat?
Good, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Like I said, this is my friend, guys. He's extremely knowledgeable in all sports, but he's definitely my Mets insider and stuff like that. Pat, do you have anything to say to the fans?
I'm just glad to be here, and hopefully we're going to talk a little Mets and Yankees and other baseball news around that you guys want to hear.
Definitely, absolutely. So we'll definitely start with the Yankees. They're making a lot of moves and possibly the best bullpen in the league? Question mark to you, me?
Now, the Yankees added Zach Britton. Obviously, they brought him back. They added Adam Ottavino, who was one of the
strikeout Babe Ruth.
Yeah, Babe Ruth, yeah. Adam Ottavino, who actually is the first number 0 in Yankees history.
Oh, there you go.
He was one of the most highly regarded free agent relievers this offseason, and they just wound up bringing him in. So now they kind of set up a super bullpen, again, as they have gone to in the last recent years as a blueprint. These guys now, they have multiple options to close out games, obviously, and Aroldis Chapman, Dylan Betances coming back as a setup man, and then Ottavino and Britton. Obviously, Britton closed in Baltimore for years.
Right.
And then they also have guys like Chad Green, too, who are going to be good.
Even Canely, if he bounces back, Canely can step right into that role too. Like they have like 6 nasty guys who they get to throw in 7, 8, 9 and be comfortable with whatever role they play, which is crazy to me.
Exactly. Yeah, that was, again, they really haven't. Their area of weakness over the years has been in the starting rotation, and they did add James Paxton, but they really, again, are emphasizing their bullpen strength as to make up for their weaker starting rotation.
And again, like you said, starting pitching hasn't been their greatest, but with this bullpen, they only need them to go 4 innings, 4.5, 5 innings, really, and then they could just throw it in the bullpen and have arm after arm after arm and just, pound you with it. So that's really, really hard. And you brought up James Paxton. Do you really like that signing, though?
I mean, I think that he's a decent mid-level starter, like maybe a 2 or a 3, but like he's not the starting pitcher who I think they needed to get this offseason. And a Corbin, obviously, who the Nationals maybe arguably overpaid for, or a Dallas Keuchel who's still out there, but he had a down year kind of last year, so I do understand them not throwing all this money at him.
And I kind of agree with you. I mean, Paxton's, he had that no-hitter, and it is what it is. I'm not excited about it, but I'm not like, oh, okay, I guess we could have gone. There were definitely worse options, but I think, like you said, he's a definitely nice middle of the rotation guy, a solid 2, 3, possibly even 4, to get through, and he definitely is like a linchpin, kind of like definitely better option than what that was out there in that case. But some of the other things, DJ LeMahieu and Troy Tulowitzki, I'm very confused by these. What are your thoughts about those?
Now, obviously they brought in Tulowitzki, who hasn't played much in the last few years. He's been obviously injured every year, and that's why they couldn't have just stuck with him, especially with Didi probably missing the whole year, if not 3/4 of the Tommy John surgery. So Tulowitzki, I think, is going to be used as a backup. I like the LeMahieu signing, obviously. He's not the best offensive player, especially away from Coors Field, but he's very slick with the glove. He's very good defensively, and once they could plug LeMahieu in at second and then move Gleyber Torres over to short, which is his natural position, and I think that's what they're going to roll with, hopefully, until Didi comes back, and if he comes back this year.
That's the way I looked at it. I was just like, obviously, you're right. DJ LeMahieu doesn't have the greatest numbers, but it's Yankee Stadium. It's a fan box. You literally pop fly, and he's gonna do well there. He's a 298 average hitter. In the last 5 years, he was Gold Glove, All-Star Gold Glove, MVP with some votes. Gold Glove, All-Star. You know what I'm saying? So he's an All-Star caliber player. So obviously, it's a great deal for them. You're getting a very talented player who can play defense. Who's more of a a leadoff, like number 2 hitter because of his average and stuff. Like he moved the runner over and stuff like that, which is something they didn't really have. They're trying to put Judge at 2 just because he can hit home runs. But now you have a security number 2 hitter in LeMahieu who can bunt, he can slap it the other way and actually move guys so that Judge can bring him in as a 3rd or a 4th hitter, obviously with him and Stan in the lineup. But yeah, I don't understand the Troy Tulowitzki signing just because, like you said, he hasn't played in a while. Like, obviously, big name 10 years ago, literally the best shortstop of the time.
Yeah.
And definitely decreased in value steadily once he pretty much went to Toronto.
Yeah. Like, he really hasn't had a productive year since 2015 when he was traded to Toronto. He's pretty much just been injured ever since then, and his age is getting up there, and he really can never stay healthy. So I don't think that they're really counting on him as much, and that's why the LeMahieu signing made sense. I do like that a lot. Also, they have a question mark at first base still, obviously, with Greg Bird having a down year last year. He's had his fair share of injuries. They got a surprise production out of Luke Voigt, so those two guys are going to duke it out for the starting job. And the way the Yankees have been going the last few years, they've been really only riding with a 3-man bench because they like to do the 8-man bullpen.
Right. I think Voigt's got the job. Just Bird's injury history and just his lack of performance. I mean, I guess he's a nice backup. He's a little bit better defensively, but I think Luke Voigt's got that job right off the gate. And I think it's his position to lose. If he loses it, it's because he's god awful in spring training.
Yeah, that's what it's going to come down to, is them competing in spring training. And Bird, obviously, they've had high hopes in. He was one of their top prospects and a promising young player. And then now it just seems like injuries have derailed his career a little bit. He really was not good last year. So,
and obviously the going back to it, do you see this team making it deep into possibly to the World Series, deep into the playoffs and possibly the World Series?
I think that really depends on their bullpen and what kind of production they get out of Giancarlo Stanton, especially this year. They are using Stanton's contract as a reason to not acquire a Bryce Harper or Manny Machado, but they acquired him last year hoping he'd be that player to put them over to the next level, considering he came off an MVP season and he really did not live up to that last year. So I think a lot of how far the Yankees go depends on Stanton's bat, especially in the postseason where he really struggled too after bouncing back a little in the regular season.
I mean, but you know what you're going to get with him. It's either going to be a Herculean home run or a strikeout most of the time. So, I don't understand why fans, and I told this when they first signed him, I was like, I don't understand I understand the hype that he's a threat, and he's always a threat, especially in Yankee Stadium now. But what you're getting with him. You're getting a home run hitter or a strikeout guy. I don't get why people are still so surprised about the strikeout numbers. We've known this his entire career.
Exactly. No, they booed him for what he was doing in the beginning of last year. And that's just the player that he was. It's just no one really knew it that well because he played for the Miami Marlins.
So you kind of segued into it in this previous, but you don't think they signed Machado or Harper? I know they're more linked to Machado than they are to Harper, but do you don't think they signed either of them?
I don't think there's a shot that they sign either of them at this point. Obviously, teams like the Phillies are clearly the front runner to sign Harper right now, and Machado is drawing interest from the White Sox, the Phillies as well, and the Padres as of recently.
I was about to say the Padres are kind of creeping up there now. Or the Padres, what? What have you heard about that?
So they're monitoring the situation for Machado right now, but there was a report today from John Heyman of FanCred that the Padres now more realistically are looking at Mike Moustakas. Obviously, Eric Hosmer's there playing first for them, and he's lobbied for him because they used to be teammates on the World Series team of the Royals. So that'd make a lot more sense for them and be a lot cheaper option.
Absolutely. He's still a serviceable player, in Milwaukee, helped that team go into the playoffs and make a good run into it. But I definitely see that as a possibility. When I read that, I was like, the Padres, which, good for them because they've been kind of irrelevant for a long time now. They've been rebuilding for the last 15 odd years. Since even Adrian Gonzalez was there when they were somewhat good. But definitely good to see someone at least different. Not just the Red Sox, the Yankees. None of these major market teams like the San Diego Padres. All right, good for the little guy, I guess. But
yeah, exactly. That's the Cincinnati Reds have been pretty active this offseason too.
Absolutely.
At least with their talks and stuff, and they have the farm system to make trades. They're looking into JT Realmuto, and they've kind of emerged as the front runner to acquire him, given their farm system.
Well, talking about JT Realmuto and who he didn't sign with and who he didn't trade for are Metsies. Our Metsies did not sign JT Realmuto. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, honestly, he's a good player, but I'm glad that they didn't give up more assets to get him. I mean, obviously, with the Cano and Edwin Diaz trade, they gave up their number one prospect in outfielder Jared Kelenic and their pitcher Justin Dunn, who was a top pick in a couple years ago, I believe 2016.
Yeah,
so,
I believe so.
Like, they already have given up a lot of their farm system and kind of, like, done, like, a 23-player turnaround of their system this offseason, so there's only so much you can do. The Marlins were asking for so much. I
mean, they wanted Rosario and, like, who's already our shortstop, and we have pretty much no backup, but they wanted Rosario. I totally agree. What do you think about the Wilson signing, then? Do you think it's, like, a perfect fit?
I mean, I didn't particularly want him before they made the signing. I am happy with it, but his walks per 9 last year were 5.4, which is very high for a reliever. I also have heard in the past week, though, that part of that could be because he was caught by Cubs catcher Wilson Contreras, who was the worst pitch framer in the league last year, so that could be part of it. But other Cubs fans I've talked to, too, were not a big fan of his last year due to his inability, I should say, to throw strikes at times. But he was very good against lefties, and he's a high strikeout pitcher, so that is what they brought him.
And has some clearing experience in his past as well, so that's another close. Yeah. We have 3. The Mets in itself has 3 closers with, Diaz, who is the clear-cut closer. Obviously, Familia, who will now be reduced to the setup man, and even Wilson can be set up as a setup man when Familia has a day off or whatever and stuff like that. But I do like the signing. As you mentioned, he had a couple of good outings and stuff like that. Maybe not the best pitcher with Contreras, but I still think he can get the job done. And let's go back to the Cano Diaz trade. I was away on vacation when I saw this news breaking, but I was a love-hate relationship. I loved the Diaz part, but I hated the Cano part. What do you think about it?
Well, I wasn't in love with the Cano part at first because obviously he hasn't. You don't hear much of him playing in Seattle the last couple of years,
right.
But all you know is he obviously was suspended last year for 80 games for testing positive for a masking agent of PEDs. But once he came back, he really produced at the plate. He's a high WAR player, and he's just a professional hitter and an all-star. And even though he's getting up there in age, he's a very good defender, and I think he's going to be a pretty big bat at the middle of the lineup. And then obviously they got Diaz, who's the best young closer in the game. He set a record with 57 saves last year. So.
But where does this leave McNeil? I don't want him in the outfield. I'm sorry. He cannot have him in the outfield.
Now, I thought that he was going to start at third for sure until the Lowry signing. Now it looks like McNeil's mostly going to play, obviously, all around the infield, but mainly outfield. Hopefully he can adjust to left field. But that leads me into what else I wanted to talk about, in how I'm very surprised that the Mets have not gone into the outfield market more aggressively than they should, considering they really only have true outfielders. If you're not counting McNeil, they only have Broxton, Lagares, Nimmo, and Conforto, and Lagares has never been able to stay healthy. The guy hasn't played more than 94 games since 2015, which is a really big concern because they're really about an injury away from starting an infielder in the outfield and not really having much behind them. Obviously, they signed Gregor Blanco and Rajai Davis to minor league deals, but you can't count on those guys, especially if you expect to contend for the division this year and beyond.
Yeah, I definitely agree. They're not the flashy names, obviously. I mean, even though Gregor Blanco usually kills us, it doesn't usually mean anything, but they're definitely not stellar names. And obviously, Rajai Davis, who had the home run in the World Series to help tie it. But other than that, he hasn't performed, to any expectations, really. But speaking of the outfield, who do you think are starting outfielders opening day?
Opening day, I think that ultimately, if they don't make any more moves, I think it's going to be Lagares in center, Nimmo in right, and Conforto in left. I don't think it's going to stay that way. I do think McNeil's going to get some significant time in left with Nimmo in center and Conforto in right, just because those 3 bats give you the best options in your lineup. I really do like McNeil a lot. I think he was the big spark plug. Obviously, once he came up with the Mets last July, they were like 11 games over 500 with him once he made his debut and they were actually exciting to see. And obviously, he gave Rosario a big boost batting behind him in the lineup. So I do think that they need to find a way to get his bat into the lineup. I think that McNeil is going to get some significant time in left with Nimmo in right, and Conforto in right, just because they're those 3 bats give you the best options in your lineup. I really do like McNeil a lot. I think he was the big spark plug. Obviously, once he came up with the Mets last July, they were like 11 games over 500 with him once he made his debut and they were actually exciting to see. And obviously, he gave Rosario a big boost batting behind him in the lineup. So I do think that they need to find a way to get his bat into the lineup. as for
and
their
use
first
Lagares
game,
as a defensive in late game, switch him out. I mean, you Gold Glove center fielder.
I mean, I don't really count on him staying healthy. I mean, he really hasn't in the last 3 years. I just honestly, I think that it's not a concept of if, it's a question of when he's going to get hurt. I do like Lagares though when he's healthy, but it's just not realistic at this moment. Like, maybe they can get lucky and he'll play a whole season, but it's really unlikely, I think, at this point.
Fair enough. Speaking of a little bit of, talk about the Mets and their future, especially with their infield, Peter Alonso, starting job? Question mark?
Well, I think that he obviously needs to tear it up in the spring, but the only thing is he can't be up with the team until after the first 11 games. I think they've already decided it. Obviously, Brody said that it is a possibility, but it's really not, because it makes no sense, because they need those extra 11 games that he has to sit until the 12th game for an extra year of control.
Right.
So they're not going to give up an extra year of control just so he can start the first 11 games. Obviously, in the end of the season, it winds up mattering by a game or two, but for the long term, they need to keep in mind
preserve him for that control. I agree. I don't know. Like, I seen a couple of videos of him. I do like his swing. Obviously, he's one of the top ranked players in the minor leagues right now in all of baseball. As one of the only Mets in like the top 100 I just saw. Justin Dunn was number 94, but obviously we traded him, like you said. But I just don't know who else we're gonna stick at first. Like we don't have a solid option, I would say, at least. You know what I'm saying? We can stick Jed Lowry, I guess, in there in the time being, and have Todd Frazier at third and stuff like that. But
I actually think it's going to be the other way around. I think Frazier is going to play first until Alonso's ready to come up after the first 11,
and Lowry play third.
Then it might be McNeil, I think.
McNeil, that's not, and that way you get that his bat in there as well, at least in the first 11 games. I like that. And going back to the same thing, the Mets have been somewhat linked. They're saying they're in on everything and everyone. Do you see a chance of at least Machado or Harper?
I think at this point there's no shot. Obviously there wasn't a chance in the beginning of the offseason, but there's really no chance now, unless obviously their prices come way, way down, or they can somehow settle to. It's funny actually, because Carlos Pena, former first baseman of the Rays,
right,
now MLB Network analyst, actually was saying today that the Mets should offer Harper 10 years, $300 million, front load the contract, and offer a third-year opt-out. And that is the only way I do see them signing him, that maybe they sign him to possibly a short-term deal with a lot of money in the front load and an opt-out after a year or two. And then that's the only possible way. But right now, it's not a realistic option. I think the Phillies are probably going to wind up getting this deal done with Harper. Obviously, there was some fake reports today that the Phillies agreed to a deal with Harper. That came out from Vegas, that all bets were off on the Harper signings, but that wound up to be diffused and was nothing more than a rumor. But I do think that besides that, the Phillies are still the front runners to land Harper.
And then where does Machado sign?
I think Machado probably signs with the White Sox at this point.
But why the White? Like, my thing is, it's not a sexy name. You know what I'm saying? It's the White Sox. Like, I guess not the Cubs. It's still Chicago, but South Side of Chicago. Like, where's he gonna go from there? You know what I'm saying? Then they have nice prospects, but that's what they are. They're prospects. They're not in contention as of right now.
I know, yeah. They've made some moves to where they could be pretty decent. Obviously, signing Machado could put them over the edge. It's not the biggest market for him to go to, but unless a surprise team emerges out of the shadows, then they're probably the front runners right now, because the Yankees are all but out, and the Phillies look like they've shifted their focus to Bryce Harper.
And I was reading and I was watching MLB Network, but it says the longer this drags out, though, it may look like more that the Nationals might end up back with Harper, just because of the timingness and the willingness that the Phillies don't want to wait that long. Because if they wanted someone, especially of this magnitude, they definitely kind of would have had it kind of done by now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Only a little over 2 weeks before pitchers and catchers. Do you think? Obviously Scott Boras, who's who always loves the waiting game for his clients. Do you foresee it going into spring training like last year with Hosmer and stuff like that, or do you see it kind of around where everyone's thinking Super Bowl Sunday kind of feels?
I really think that maybe that something will get reached, like a deal between both stars in the next month. I think that it will go into spring training, probably, at least in the beginning part. There's still so many big names left out on the market. Obviously, you got Harper and Machado. You got Moustakas is still a free agent. Guys like Gio Gonzalez and Wade Miley, like at least in the starting pitching market. That actually leads me to my next point, that the Mets are also thin in their rotation. Obviously, you have Jason Vargas as their fifth starter, who was horrible last year until really down the stretch.
Throw me in there. I'm the fifth starter, Pat. I got you.
Yeah.
Come in. I honestly think I could do better than Jason Vargas.
Yeah, honestly, you could. I mean, but and then what do they have after that? They have Corey Oswalt, who was like okay in a couple spot starts, and they really don't have much behind that. And also Steven Matz is our fourth starter, and he's
always
a question mark. He's hurt every year. So
right. Lugo, baby, Seth Lugo and Gazelman, but that takes away from our bullpen. So
exactly,
it's a no-win situation. So what are you expecting out of the season for both teams, Yankees and Mets? Then just an early prediction. What do you kind of foresee?
I think the Yankees will finish second in the AL East to the Red Sox. I think the Sox still are strong unless they experience the World Series hangover, which is true. I mean, a lot of teams, as of recently especially, have experienced that. But I do think the Red Sox have so much firepower and obviously the Red Sox do have a question now because they're not bringing back their closer Craig Kimbrell. They're going with what they have.
Right.
So obviously their bullpen's a question mark. But I still do think that the Red Sox take that division and the Yankees finish second and obviously probably win the first wild card. As for the Mets, right now they're a wild card team, I'd say.
Wild card?
Yeah.
They're good enough to at least make it?
The rotation and they don't experience too much injuries, they'll win the wild card, possibly could win the division. It obviously depends on what the Braves and Phillies do. And the Nationals for that sake. The Phillies, obviously, if they get Harper, though, they're probably the favorites to win the division. They got a ton of talent, and they've made some other decent moves this offseason. They got some pretty good young pitching, especially in ace Aaron Nola. As for the Mets, though, I think that they should look to add Gio Gonzalez to get that starting pitching depth. You know, they're built around pitching, that team, so they need to play to that strength. So,
and it's a lefty who has experience in the NL East.
What was that?
And Gio Gonzalez, who's a lefty who has experience in the NL East, so he knows the teams, he knows the batters.
Exactly. He's had success in the NL East, especially, and like I think he's someone who could come in and pitch really well. He had good numbers too at the end of last year. He got traded to the Brewers, obviously helped them win their division. Right. So obviously the Mets do have some more question marks too, obviously in the outfield like we discussed, and it's a lot of their success is based off the production of Peter Alonso, that they're hoping that he has a breakout year this year in his rookie year. But obviously that's a lot to rely on. I do love the Wilson Ramos and Cano acquiring both those players, so I do think those guys are going to help tremendously in the lineup, and obviously hopefully a healthy Conforto and Brandon Nimmo playing off his success that he experienced last year. So it's really all just up to Mickey Callaway learning in year 2, and then we'll see. This team should be back in the playoffs, though.
Letting batters making the batting lineup right and sending the right players out. So hopefully that gets fixed up. You know, a lot to expect for both teams. A lot of moves. I mean, we're still not done yet. You know, we'll see if any more moves. And then we'll catch you next time. This is Pat Ragazzo. You can follow me at the Pat Ragazzo Report on Twitter. Anywhere else that you can read your stuff, Pat?
On Metsmerized Online.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until next week. All right. That's it for this week, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed some baseball talk with my friend Pat. Thank you, Pat, for all your insight, and hope everyone gets to enjoy everything that we talked about. Some special shout outs. Thank you, PD Hef, Scott, Zach Bellman, and Pat yourself for sending me some memorabilia stuff, some pictures and stuff like that. If you guys haven't seen, I've definitely put them on my Instagram and my Twitter. So remember to follow me at FTN_sports, and I'll feature you guys. So keep sending me stuff, guys, and even ask me questions on my socials. You know, I'll definitely give you my opinion on what I think on the current news, especially like that Knicks trade that we had recently. But yeah, so remember to like, share, and follow, guys. And I'm Audi 5000. Until next time, peace.